This is lesson number 16 in the series of lessons that goes along with the book, How to Play the 3-String Cigar Box Guitar. And in this lesson, we're going to be talking about the major scale. Now, this is not a book about music theory, I know that, but a little bit of music theory can be really helpful when we start talking about chord construction, what notes belong to a chord, how do we name those chords. Also, when we're talking about creating some licks or doing some improv, then especially the major scale, minor pentatonic scale will be helpful to create some nice bluesy sounding licks, either major or minor sound to them. So we're going to talk in this lesson a little bit about the major scale. That's really the foundation of all music theory. That's where all the numbers come from. For key signatures, for chords, for just a lot of things. So what is the major scale? Well, the major scale, we're all very familiar with the sound of that thing in Western music. And when I say Western music, I don't mean country Western music specifically, but Western music as opposed to, Eastern or Oriental music, Western Europe and America's type of music. We rely on the major scale quite a bit. And it's a very familiar sound. It's the sound of do, re, mi. Now, do, I know this is not a singing class, but indulge me if you will. Let's sing the major scale. We'll sing it in G, do, and we're going to sing do, re, mi. Here we go. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, do, do. So we go. That's an octave. And the notes that we sang are the major scale. Well, there are a lot of different scales. Why is that the major scale? And what makes a major scale? The key here is the interval pattern. Now, there aren't too many things you need to remember to understand music theory, but I feel that the interval pattern for the major scale is one of them. Just to commit to memory. It's whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Now, the frets on a guitar are laid out so that each fret represents a half step. So 2 frets would represent a whole step. So if I were going to play whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, we can just play it right up the 3rd string. So here's a whole step to 2nd fret, another whole step to the 4th fret, half step to the 5th fret, whole step to the 7th fret, whole step to the 9th fret, whole step to the 11th fret, and you can hear it coming, half step to the 12th fret. Okay, now let's do that again without me talking so we can hear the sound of the major scale, keeping in mind the interval pattern of whole and half steps. Here we go. Sound like a major scale? Well, it is a major scale because of that interval pattern. In fact, no matter what note we start and end on, if we play that interval pattern, it'll be a major scale. The name will change depending on the note that we start and end on. If I were to play something like this, well, it may be some kind of a scale, because there are a lot of different scales, but not the major scale. It doesn't sound like it. Why didn't it sound like it? Because I didn't play whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Now, I don't mean to beat that thing to death, but it's important to remember the interval pattern. If you look on page 73 at figure 4.1, that shows you the interval pattern. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. 2 frets, 2 frets, 1 fret, 2 frets, 2 frets, 2 frets, 1 fret. Now, the C major scale, I'm looking at figure 4.2 now on page 74. The C major scale is the only major scale that just falls naturally in that pattern. And it's easy to see it on the keyboard of a piano, the way the keys are laid out. Any two keys next to each other are a half step apart. So you'll see, like from C to D, there's two white keys there, there's a black key in between. So C to D is a whole step. If I were to just go from C to C sharp to the black key there, that would be a half step. So whenever two white keys are side by side, that's a half step. Wherever they have a black key in between them, that's a whole step. So you can see C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C falls naturally in that pattern. C to D is a whole step. D to E is a whole step. Now E to F is a half step. That's where we want to have a half step. F to G is a whole step. G to A is a whole step. A to B is a whole step. And then B to C is a half step. That C major scale falls naturally in the pattern. We don't have to tweak any of the notes, like adding a sharp to them or a flat. And you can see here that any two consecutive notes have a whole step between them, except for two pairs, B to C and E to F. Okay, and then to remember that, I show a picture in figure 4-3 of a little bumblebee or a little honeybee. Not that there's a half step between B and E, there's like a perfect fourth there, but B, E, E for B. So B to C and E to F. If you remember where the half steps are, then you don't have to remember. All the others have whole steps. Now, we're playing a lot of our stuff in the key of G because we're tuned to an open G, G, D, G. So the key signature for G has a sharp, F sharp in it. Why is that? Because we have to preserve that pattern. So think about the G major scale. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Okay? And I show in figure 4-4, I show all the major scales, sharp keys and flat keys. And if you work through any of these, insisting that we keep that pattern going, you'll see where these things come from. Okay, let's just take, for instance, the key of E. If I were to write up here on the screen E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, would that be the E major scale? Well, no, because it doesn't fit that pattern. So we have to go E a whole step. Well, that'd be E to F sharp. Another whole step, F sharp has got to go to G sharp. Now, G sharp to A is a half a step. A to B is a whole step. But B to C sharp is a whole step. C sharp to D sharp is a whole step. And now D sharp back to E is a half step. So it works out that way. And you could work through any of these major keys. And what are those? Well, key signatures. If you're playing in the key of E, you have 4 sharps in that key. Why? Because the E major scale has 4 sharps. I think of fat cats go down and eat breakfast as a mnemonic to remember the order of sharps, because there is an order. They're always in the same order. If there's 1 sharp, it's F. 2 sharps, fat cats, F and C, and so forth. All right, so that's a little bit on the major scale in terms of its interval pattern and key signatures as they relate to sharps or flats. You'll have one or the other to make the notes fit. Let's take a look at the major scale on the 3-string cigar box guitar. So if you look on page 79, figure 4-5, this shows the notes of the major scale. Now already we've played up the 4th string, but we can play across the strings, going from the open 3rd string, G, to the open 1st string, G. That's an octave. So where are these notes in between if we say we wanted to play across the strings? Well, let's change to the next higher string as soon as we can. So we got now from this is 1. You know what? Think of the numbers too. I should have mentioned this before when we were singing Do, Re, Mi. Let's sing that major scale again, except this time sing 1, 2, 3 instead of Do, Re, Mi. G major scale. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, or 8. The numbers really are more important to us than Do, Re, Mi. Do, Re, Mi are just some sounds, but the numbers, that's the scale degree of the notes that we're playing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I could go 5 there, or go to the open second string. 5, 6, 7, and then open first string. So you can see these notes in figure 4-5, either playing up a string or across strings. And again, you can start on any place. If we started on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, well, we'd be starting on A, and we could play from A to A. As long as we preserve that pattern, we'd be playing an A major scale. Okay, so that's a little bit on the major scale and key signatures, the pattern of the major scale, and we'll be able to figure out the note names, knowing that there's only 2 places where there's half steps. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about chord construction, and we're going to use the numbers out of the major scale to make chords on the guitar.